Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MSP 1337. I'm joined this week by Jimmy Hatzel of Hatz.ai. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be on. Excited to hopefully talk some AI today.
Well, I can't imagine bringing someone who has .ai in the company name. So I'm going to say, let's talk about future of MSP in an AI world. Obviously, your company, the products that you have, obviously facilitate some really interesting things in the enablement for an MSP. We were joking about it earlier. I remember when I used to do ConnectWise tips and tricks and how to get people to do, open tickets, whether they did it through the web portal or they did it through, submitting an email. We would always say if you call, there's a bill or there's a fee attached to it. So please open a ticket, then let's, figure out what's going on. And I think one of the products that you were just describing to me kind of solves that. Like I don't care if they call anymore because AI is taking that call and creating a ticket on my behalf. So uh, along those lines, what do you envision are going to be sort of like the big we see it in the security space and we can go down rabbit holes, I think, on that. But like from an
Yeah.
MSP perspective, where do you see the real the sort of the new frontier of AI and how it intersects with what MSPs do?
Yeah, great question. I think that there's a lot of like misconceptions. I think the key thing to keep in mind is every huge technology trend historically, there's always been a group of people that could help other people figure it out. And in my experience, the most recent ones, right, movement to cloud, cybersecurity, those have been MSPs, right?
Sure.
So like I don't like I think people are nervous of like AGI sort of like taking everything over and what's the point of even working anymore? And that may very well happen, but we got to almost pretend that it's not. And I think it's a
Sure.
long way off. I can't tell you exactly when, right? You can ask Sam Altman that and form your own opinion. But I think that there are some new realities that are quickly forming on sort of what's possible and with AI, whether that be inside your MSP or with your customers. And I think it's happening faster than a lot of people think. So like there's like people will go immediately to like, oh, well, AI will go and automatically solve every ticket and we won't need level one anymore and like that kind of stuff. And like maybe, but like, we still have plenty of time before that's going to happen. And
Sure.
I think like you can look at like past sort of industrial revolutions on like what's going to happen. So if you look at like the invention of the steam engine, right? This is a common comparison. Um, right, all of a sudden you didn't need to make all the ingredients for a product you're selling. You didn't you had trade across regions. You had cheap, reliable transportation that sort of came quickly. Um, and I'll get to the comparison of like where it falls with MSP and
I
sort of
thought you were
like
going to go
two
get on a
things.
train.
Yeah. Two things sort of happened, right? You had companies that like either um like just laid off and their team and became like small like sort of mom and pop businesses
Sure.
and some of them survived, some of them didn't. And then you had companies that began to scale really quickly. So like Guinness is a classic example of that, right? They were a local brewery at the time, and instead of sort of like, okay, now we don't need to source everything. We can get ingredients from different places. We can sell across the entire world. They decided to do that. And what they did was they kept instead of like saying, hey, I can get 3x output out of one person or 4x output out of one person, Let me drop down three or four, you know, uh, 75 or 60% of my staff,
Yeah.
I'm going to increase what I do. And so I think what you're going to see is an increase in the amount of work or the amount of customers that an MSP can support um, with the same number of people. And it's starting to happen a little bit. And it's already happened with technology we have, but we're sort of like getting to this like agentic world, and I think it's going to be the big talk of 2025, where you sort of have all these day-to-day functions that you do, whether it's communicate with a customer, create tickets, right? These are things that we've already sort of solved for, or like, reset someone's password or, create an account for someone or something like that. And previously, you had to really spend a lot of time mapping out exactly how that happened if you wanted it to be automated. But in this like agentic world, you can really have AI do a lot of that with a human as a co-pilot.
Sure.
So it's just like, I think like that's sort of where things are going for MSPs.
Because it's
You
here in the
know,
consumer space, right? Like it wasn't like Amazon made a big announcement about incorporating the chatbot into your app. Like it's suddenly there. Suddenly you can ask questions directly to the chatbot, like say about the product that you're looking at. Like my favorite question is like when I'm looking at new laptops and I'm curious, like, hey, pricing's where I want it. And I'll ask questions like, how much does this laptop weigh? And you're like, oh, yeah, there's definitely a compromise. I'm saving $600, but I'm not saving my back because it's going to weigh 6 pounds instead of three or whatever. But like that was not an AI interaction 2, 3 years ago. That was absolutely like you either found it in the forums through a search, or you maybe broke down and decided to chat with customer service. Most likely, you went out of your way to look up that laptop on the manufacturer's website if you really wanted to know what the weight was. So just even on that, the amount of time it saved, saves us in the consumer space. So I can't imagine, you start talking about tickets, like there was no direct cost associated for me if I don't care about my time, right? In the consumer world space, like it's just me, figuring out my Black Friday habits, right? But if you look at it through the lens of MSP, we're talking about actual dollars being saved. If you can lower the minutia around, users will always need someone to reset their password at some point in their 30, 60, 90 12-month life cycle of I forgot, I deleted it accidentally in my password manager. I can't find it in my password manager, and the list just continues to go on.
yeah, and I think you make a good point because AI is really different in past mega trends like cybersecurity or movement to cloud, in that it's happening bottom up at this like before it's happening top down. So like all of a sudden the average user, or maybe many users, say like 30 to 40% is typically what the percentage of American workers who use AI in a given week, like Gen AI, like
Sure.
ChatGPT or something like that. Um, so they're like experiencing this and using it sort of before companies have time to put a strategy in place, put guardrails in place, that sort of stuff, which wasn't the case. Like nobody it was a lot smaller percentage of users who were setting up lots of cybersecurity measures on their computer. You know,
Right.
um, right? So it's a unique situation, and it is forcing people to adopt quicker than they like, because the guardrails around it and the value that users are getting out of it are happening sort of like before companies can say like, here's what you're allowed to do and here's what you're not allowed to
Right.
do. And people sort of do it and they don't necessarily tell their boss either. So like that, like
No, this is the epitome of shadow IT with the repercussions potentially being felt immediately and it's painful, or we have no idea what those repercussions are yet to be because that data leakage, if you will, hasn't actually been consumed again to know that it was just sitting out there. I just have to ask the right questions because someone was not realizing that there is no real walls being built around this sort of like free generative AI tools that are, so prevalent now.
Yeah, so it's like two parts. It's or three parts, I should say. It's user training data, right? If someone's using free software and uploading a bunch of company documents, the next model's trained on it. So proprietary secrets, API keys, things like that. Like you run into a lot of problems with that. And then there's access. So not things not being set up properly. All of a
Sure.
sudden, AI has access to a bunch of files it wasn't supposed to. It may be in a walled garden, right?
Yeah.
But if user access control wasn't provisioned properly, uh, you know, maybe the user who had never thought to look up the weight of the
Right.
laptop is now getting it every time, right? And the weight of the laptop could be the CEO's salary or like some company legal documents or something.
Right. So let me ask you a question. And I don't know that, Hat's AI does this, but, I've had it brought up to me on more than one occasion. Wouldn't it be slick if I could use AI and have a conversation with it around like, hey, go tell me what's not configured properly and fill in the blank firewall config. And hey, go check that against all of my clients. And because you have been feeding it enough about your organization, assuming you keep it in the right container walled garden, that it would be able to then give you those reports. Because I think one of the biggest areas that collectively we all fail at is to maintain proper configurations, even if they were properly configured out of the gate. Maintaining that state of security is very hard, and as you pointed out, and more often than not, it wasn't set up properly to begin with. So just even being able to go back and address those types of, accelerated, rolled it out. We'll go back to this after we get them up and running, and that never happens. Are you seeing that becoming a
Yeah, so like we see people doing that in more of like a human in the loop type of way right now, and right, like AI has the last mile problem. So like the foundational models are capable of incredible things, but they don't necessarily have a good way to interact with, your Fortinet firewall configurations or whatever it is,
right?
right?
They don't
Name
talk
your
to
tool.
assets very well.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not an AI problem. It's just that last mile delivery, which is sort of happening like in the background, and it isn't necessarily what everyone sees because the big news is
Right.
like, GPT whatever came out. So like if all new development stopped on like AI models today, it would still be another 5 years of innovation of people figuring out the last mile problems for
Sure.
all of these edge use cases. So like that the examples of that is exactly what we're like focusing on in 2025, right? We sort of like we launched this year, right? We brought on the first beta testers, and then we sort of went public towards in the back half of this year. And like 2025 is all about like last mile delivery. How do we allow AI to safely connect into sort of like all of these edge use cases and edge systems, and it shouldn't have to be like an API request for everything, right? There should be easier
Right.
ways to do it. um
Yeah.
but I
APIs
think
scare me still because we don't seem to be evolving the API from a security standpoint very fast.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's like, if it's not set up properly, like you set up an API with admin privileges, like to go look in, name your system, and then it's shared amongst the whole team,
Yeah.
right? Or it's not set up right and it's leaking the key somewhere. Like there's big repercussions that can come from that. So like AI's problem is its utility, or its problem for MSPs because people find immediate value a lot of times from using it, whether that be something as simple as summarize my email or summarize my calls,
Right.
to like something much more complicated, which name your use case, put together this onboarding document, right? Like look through these logs for me, that type of thing.
Which
Um,
gets into more of like, it's not that it's intelligent, it's that it has been given the right formulas to analyze that which it has access to. It's just looking at it like it's just a file to it, right? Like it's unstructured data that it's looking for patterns based on what patterns you've asked it to go and get. I recently started using it's called HiDoc, and HiDoc has ChatGPT built in at the hardware level, and when you go and do the transcribe it into something meaningful aside from it being an audio file, it actually identifies who the different speakers are. So you could
Hmm.
have two or five or 10. It'll identify the different speakers. And then you've seen like with, Zoom AI and some of these others, Otter AI, depending on your flavor, it gives you some decent summaries of a meeting and it'll give you maybe some decent action items. I started using this thing and I'm like, oh my word, this is insane. Like it's leaps and bounds ahead of, what these other tools are doing. And it doesn't even have a monthly subscription fee attached to it.
Yeah, and I just like the utility that people get causes them to sort of forget about security very quickly. And
Right.
so like we're gonna see huge amounts of problems as people start leaving jobs, right? Or whatever, right? And they've been using AI in their personal account and have every single meeting they've ever been in recorded and transcribed, right, on their personal email address. Like because the company never got, their plan together to roll out something that's approved and the person just set it up and paid the monthly fee themselves or,
And
bought
we have
something that didn't
laws
have
for
it.
this too, right? Like depending on what state you're in, one party or two party, depending, I know California's two party is, say using Zoom AI without recording the meeting, does that count as a one or two party conversation? Does it count when it comes to like the equivalent of using the telephone because it's not a telephone?
Yeah,
We're
I
going to
mean,
see a lot of laws coming, I think, in the near future too.
yeah, I'm no lawyer. I think a lot of times there's little pop-ups, right? This meeting is being recorded or something like
Yeah,
that, or AI assistant has entered, right? Which people may turn off because they think the announcement's annoying. But like I think AI is one of those things where the innovation happens so fast that the legal system won't be able to catch up with it. So we'll be litigating problems
sure.
from a year or two before when we're iterating like 100 times faster. So like I think people are just gonna do it and it's gonna be a mess. And like I think it's an opportunity for MSPs though, right, to have that privacy and security
Yeah.
conversation.
I mean, it's not
I
necessarily bad. It doesn't make it bad. It's just, I think,
Yeah,
to your point, going back to the beginning of like, most organizations and specifically MSPs don't have policies in place yet that say what is appropriate for how I interact with AI. And I think to some extent, the challenges that say, Hat's AI has is that when you think about your products in the context of what they're for, can easily put employees of an MSP into a mindset that says because we use Hat's AI or fill in the blank that's been designed for the MSP as a product to consume to help with, from a tools and services standpoint, that automatically means the things like maybe it's Grammarly or ChatGPT or fill in the blank are automatically okay to use and yet because they're not being provided by the organization, they're not containerized. They don't have the security protocols in place to protect both the employee and the organization and the clients from threat actors or just having data out there that shouldn't be. Are you seeing any challenges that way? Like I just feel like it's super easy almost to consume a product as an organization and get behind that and then because that's the pioneer into our space, it's suddenly become Pandora's box without even, taking a
yeah,
minute to look.
I think we're even like a few steps behind that. So like the conversations I hear from our partners is I went into a subsidiary of a well-known company. The president said that no one's using AI in their organization. They don't want to look at any AI products because they're not sure that there'd be value in it. The MSP runs a Cisco umbrella report for desktop traffic to free AI sites,
Yeah,
and 25% of all users had been on it in the past week.
sure.
And it's like, yeah, it's like there's that bottom up and top down sort of like happening. Like I think the bottom up is going to happen anyway, and I don't know, right? It could be that like an approved tool brings that 25% to 40% use.
Sure.
But I think it's more like um like business leaders are just unaware of how people are using it because there's an incentive misalignment to tell your boss that this task that took you 2 hours takes you 20 minutes now, and right, like you don't have
Or
to
that you don't
reconcile that
even do it
spreadsheet on Mondays
anymore
anymore.
because you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
automated a script using ChatGPT and you never touch it again. You bring up an interesting point. CompTIA released the state of the industry 2025. It had a lot in there about AI, and one of the things I thought was really interesting is to your point that 25%. I think it's much higher than that. I think there's still it goes back to if we go back a few years to when those two verbal commands that we can say to the IoT devices in our home,
Yeah.
whether you're an Apple or an Amazon subscriber, and that's AI. I mean, it is like it may not be the same. It's not the same type of AI per se, but you're communicating with a voice that is in fact basically converting what you would ask it verbally into a written prompt that you would do in ChatGPT or any of these other ones. And if you look at how long we've been doing that without anybody really talking about it, in fact, more or less promoting it. In fact, the only thing you would see is in certain environments are like, you can't bring a phone in here, largely because it either has a camera or it is smart enough to do those other things. We've ignored it. We've largely ignored for the last 5 years anything AI related until suddenly we saw it being incorporated into products that were not expected and the affordability of bringing the AI to my desktop or my laptop or even a Raspberry Pi has revolutionized the ideas that we can come
Yeah.
up with. We haven't gotten to a super intelligent being with AI. I don't think we ever will because today we've got to keep in mind that people are still the ones responsible for building the AI functionality. And until somebody finds someone that has that super intelligence to build it, I don't think it will,
Well, it's
exist.
like
But I
it
might be naive.
no, it's like the craziest thing because you have something that has glimpses of super intelligence in lots of different areas, right? You
From our
ask AI
perceptive
to,
from in our mind, our perception of what it's doing, we believe it to have that level of capability.
yeah, yeah. Well, and in some cases it can, like, there's been tests of like foundational models taking like MCAT exams or LSAT exams and performing in like top percentiles. And now sure, those were they could definitely be optimized, but there's no doubt that these AI models could do amazing things in very specific tasks and then just fail miserably counting the number of R's in the word strawberry, right? So it's like
Sure,
it's just not intuitive to us at all as people. But like, like some really complex like coding tasks and debugging tasks, AI can have glimpses of like a senior crazy engineer,
sure.
right? But then also like just make things up and just be totally wrong about something too. So
And justify being wrong. Like, no, the reason I came to this conclusion is because that's how it should be.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So, I mean, circling back, largely AI is happening in the MSP space in the business world, and to your point, we're seeing a lot of the bottom up to how AI is being adopted. Are you seeing as a result of things like that you're doing, where it's an opportunity to engage leadership that's potentially buying your products to say, hey, we should probably do an evaluation of, AI because this is you're not just buying, this isn't a car. Like this doesn't come with the owner's
Yeah.
manual in the glove box and it looks like a car, has a steering wheel, has pedals. I mean, even cars that are electric cars, they had to do things to them to make it at least have the illusion of operating just like the gas-powered one they used to have.
Yeah, so like it boils down what we've seen to 2 hours of training, 10 hours of usage. That's what it takes to get someone where they're thinking of their own use cases, they understand AI, and they, can use it as a co-pilot in their daily life. And now for really technical people, that 2 hours of training might have been like Googling and experimenting and figuring out like you've shared with me some of the ways that you and people on your team have used AI. Like you probably never sat down for a certification, or maybe you did a CompTIA certification. I don't know.
Those are coming. It's funny you say that because I think that if you're an engineer at an MSP, we didn't call it AI, but you've been doing that for a long time, right? Whether you were
Been
doing it in
Googling away.
RMM, yeah, but like you jump in your RMM tool, and based on what you found through Google or whatever the search tool was, you figured out a way to create automation that while it's not necessarily generative AI, you're removing the human element. And I think that's a large part of what generative AI is making us do faster because it's able to not just take a command and execute it, it can learn from the command success or failure or find the missing pieces to what would make your command do more than it actually does. And you don't have to be a programmer or write code to pull that off. And we've had examples of this for the last decade, right? Like, no code and object-based coding that, you drag things onto a screen and all of a sudden, boom, it's done. I remember building my first auto attendant. I think it was Jive Communications, and I'm literally in a Flash based environment that would literally light up red if it was going to be an invalid connection for my auto attendant. Like, can you imagine, 20 years ago, you call a hospital and you're like, "Hey, option three," and you're like, busy signal. You're like, apparently that was not the right option to click, right? Like, we've evolved from that even with automation and what would be now considered to probably be more in that AI category. Anything that you want to highlight or throw out there for those listening about what the future of AI impact on the MSP space is before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think just, preparing for you got to have some fundamental AI skills, some competencies in your organization, because things are happening faster than people realize. And I'm saying that and I live in it, right? And
Sure.
I'm working on things and 3 weeks later they're outdated or there's some new way to do it, right? Which is crazy. Um, but we're nearing the what I have been calling the agentic future, and I'm not the person alone to do that, but where all of these sort of like last mile things have been figured out and AI can act as an orchestrator to do them for you. But there's a bit of like making sure you can set up all those last mile deliveries.
Got it.
So I think that is going to be where a lot of MSPs will adopt quickly and run fast, and you're going to see a massive gap between those who do and those who don't in efficiency in their organization. Um, every MSP is busy. I've never talked to someone who works at, runs, owns an MSP who just, I got plenty of time. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that because with the trust mark, we run into that quite a bit of or just adopting frameworks in general. I don't have time for that. We had this project and we this or that. I mean, quite honestly, with what you're saying, those that embrace and adapt to how AI can, I mean, remove a lot of those barriers to getting things done, and especially those, more remedial tasks. I mean, in theory, this should start freeing up their time to focus on things that are more business efficiency models that are not tied to whether or not I did or didn't open or close a ticket. It's whether or not we've expanded, to a new vertical, or we've gotten some of those things that we keep saying we're going to get done are now, in fact, finally at least visible on somebody's radar.
Yeah, and well, I also want to caveat that too, because I think a lot of people will say, okay, well, I'll start adopting when that's here, and they discount the efficiencies that are possible today and very common today, and just
Sure,
the amount of benefit an organization can get just by, getting everyone on the team their 10 and 2, right? Their 10 hours of usage and 2 hours of training. So that's an easy way to get started, and that's what we recommend for every MSP before offering stuff to their customers,
sure.
and then all of their customers how to get started with AI.
I like it. Well, this has been an episode of MSP 1337. For those listening, thanks and have a great week.